The American Cancer Society will vehemently disagree with that. They'll say it's a definitive no link between cell phones and cancer, specifically is what we're talking about here, and that smoking, there's lots of definitive links. There's lots of definitive links between smoking and 15 types of diseases, including cancer, so they'll say there's a huge distinction. And to be clear, the thing that we're talking about here, which is getting a lot of attention, this thing from Australia, the paper, it's not a peer-reviewed paper, it's not independent research, so to speak. It's sort of a review of some existing literature out there. There have been about 24, we did some homework on this last night, 24 scientific studies, pretty good ones that say there is no link between this, but still, some prominent doctors up saying, well, look, have we done enough research? You know, Karen, I had a chance to sit down and talk to Dr. Keith Black, who is the neurosurgeon for Johnny Cochran, and you may remember that he had a brain tumor as well. He died of a brain tumor. His doctor says that he was pretty convinced that it was due to cell phone usage. I was pretty surprised at that point when he said that, but he said that he's convinced that the science will one day catch up. We use our cell phones a lot, 3 billion users, as you said. Take a look at how often cell phones are used now. This is a large part of the concern. On average, 13 hours a month. Between 18 to 24-year-olds, 22 hours a month. So this could become a huge problem for a younger population. Average call is 3+ minutes. And the wireless minutes exceeded 1 trillion in the first half of 2007 alone. The phones of today, Karen, no doubt have smaller amounts of radiation, but we use them so much longer. Bigger dose, bigger risk? That's sort of the question a lot of people are asking.
You know, and so let's talk about solutions, because no one's going to not use their cell phone. And, you know, in some ways the jury might be out on this, and it might take years before, you know, they can figure it out one way or another. Does it help if you use the, you know, the earpiece, not the Bluetooth, which we'll talk about in a second, but the one that you actually plug in and put into your ear?
Yeah, you know, I think it does. And my own independent interviews with a lot of people who sound the alarms in this, again, anecdotal evidence on their behalf, they say that using an earpiece, and I use one myself, I will tell you, since some of these conversations, that's just my own personal preference, but just a wired earpiece, again, you know, not as fancy as some of the wireless devices, but a wired earpiece, you really significantly decrease any kind of ionizing radiation that goes close to your ear. The concerns are twofold, Karen. One is the radiation itself, which is a low dose, but we use it so much. The other thing is just what is known as heat activation proteins. You have heat activation proteins in your brain. The thought is that holding a phone to your ear activates those proteins, and that can be problematic.
You know what, the other question is about the Bluetooth, because you see a lot of people, drivers especially in taxis, and people that spend a lot of time on the road,
right.
And in a lot of states these are required now to have an earpiece when you drive. People leave these in all day and they just blink, you know, they just send this wireless signal, or Bluetooth as they call it, all day long. What about that? What about concerns about that?
Well, you know, again, we spent a lot of time last night just looking at the science. There is no science to suggest that that's a problem, and the radiation from those devices is even lower than the cell phone itself. The problem, as you pointed out, is that people have it in all day long. So they're getting radiation all day long, and they're getting, again, this heat activation proteins in their ear activated all day long as well. The science wouldn't suggest it, but again, at least a couple of prominent doctors out there say that would be a concern, and they would recommend the wired earpieces.